Italian is very small, so I will speak in English, and I hope you can understand, at least maybe by the translation. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you today. I'm not a theologian, so please don't hold me by theologian standards. I'm a practitioner, a businessman, who I'm a second generation, just like the other business. And my talk today is about how God has impacted my life and my heart, and how He's taken theology and turned it into practice, to daily living in the real world. And my story today starts to a noble vocation. In many ways, we as business owners, we think a vocation should be something that is a priestly vocation. But a vocation can be something that you turn your job into something holy. And that's what will share with you today. It's a calling to be a modern day apostle, just like Jesus called his apostles, to use the business as a platform for common good and for evangelism. This is a new paradigm that I'd like to share with you today. It started, just want to show you a little bit of our company. We are headquartered in the United States, in South Carolina, near the BMW plant. We also have another plant in Santiago de Chile, and we have distribution centers all over North and South America. And we are in the mining industry. We provide screening equipment for the mines in North and South America, and even into Asia, where we operate a lot. My story starts here. This is a picture of my dad, who started our business in 1958. A very simple business, started in a garage. That picture over there is in a garage, literally in Johannesburg. And you can see that little book over there is his first savings book. And there's a number 1 there. That's the first dollar that he ever saved to start the business. So he started with a single dollar and a big dream in his heart. He groomed me from a little boy to take over the business. I was used as kind of slave labor from the time I was 6 or 7. He would pick me up from school and get me to start being participation in the business. What a wonderful dad he was, and I just wish he was here today, but he can't travel. He's 88 years old, and so I thank him for a lot of who and what I am today is because of my parents. And so here I was born in South Africa, and I had to make a decision. Do I want to go to America and start a business in America, in our industry, making screening for mining equipment? And I prayed, and I said, God, please give me a sign. I want to know, shall I leave South Africa or shall I stay? A few weeks after the prayer, I was driving in my car, and I stopped at a red light, and a car stopped in front of me. 2 guys jumped out with AK-47 machine guns and machine gunned my car. I have a little book on your desk in front of you. If you'll turn to page 17, you'll see a picture. And in that picture, you'll see my pen going through the sleeve of my shirt. This is where the bullet passed through the window, through my shirt, and out the door. But the bullet did not touch me. Can you imagine what the chances are of that happening? 1 in a billion. And so for the first time, I really felt God's hand in my life. And so here I was, okay, God, what do you want me to do? You want me to go to America? I got it. I'm leaving. And so I got on a plane within 2 weeks, and I went to America to grow the business in South Carolina. When I got to the business, the American dream teaches you about success. What does success look like in the American dream? I got some points here. Business, a house, a car, all these things that we strive for every day as business owners, right? But you know what? After years of achieving that, I felt empty. I said, God, why? I'm chasing this dream that Harvard and all these business schools teach you is success. And I'm unhappy. Why? So what God did is He presented me with a retreat. It was an Ignatian retreat, silent 3-day spiritual exercises in Atlanta. And I went to that retreat and I opened my heart. And what I realized was I was spending all my time and effort and resources, as you can see on the left-hand picture, I was using my time a little bit for my family, a little bit for my business, a little bit for God, a little bit social responsibility. But the rest, as the Cardinal said in his opening comments, is about selfishness. I was selfish. It was about me. Where was God in that? Well, a small piece on Sunday, I would go to church, right? Well, where's the rest of it? No sign. So what I decided at that retreat, God put in my heart, I want you to put me at the center of your life. I want to be your everything. And let me influence every component of your life. And that's what I did. What I realized coming out of that retreat, I was a submarine Catholic. What does that mean? It means that on Sunday, I was in front row with my 4 children, my suit on. That's me. I got it. Monday morning, it was about me. My submarine would dive. And there was no embodiment of me in public. So I realized I've got to change some things. And this is where I looked to the church. And the church, through Redemptor Hominis, teaches us a few things. Number 1 is to not treat people as a means to an end, but to use them to enrich them, not to prioritize profits over individuals. This is theology. It is not about having more, it's about being more. The dignity of a person requires that we enrich each worker physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And we need to talk to those guys over there. Oops. There we go. Sorry. And then lastly, work as a vocation. Meaningful participation by all. But how do you turn all that theory into practice? I was coming out of that retreat, my heart was on fire for God. I wanted to give him my life, but how was I going to do it? That theology sounds really good, but how do you practically do it? I looked at this very simple parable in the Bible. It talks about the Good Samaritan, how we are to use our resources to help people. There was a good analogy in there about the Levite priest and the guy in the ditch. What did he do? He closed his eyes and he just walked by. For many years, that Levite priest was me. There were people in my company bleeding, suffering, and dying. I didn't care. I was chasing the almighty dollar. So I was using people versus enriching their lives. And then I said to myself, coming back from that retreat, it said, love God with all your heart and love your neighbor. Who was my neighbor? My neighbor was my employees. How was I loving them? I wasn't even looking at them. I was leaving them in the ditch. So for the first time in my life, I opened my eyes to see how many of my employees were really in a ditch. And I'll share with you in a few minutes some of the things. From the new evangelization, we learn a few things. And this is kind of my interpretation of that in both Exodus, 1 Peter, and Revelations. We are called to be priests, prophets, and kings. We call ourselves modern-day business owners, but we're truly called by the Scriptures. What does that mean? To be a priest. I'm not an official priest in the Catholic Church, but God calls us to a royal priesthood. What does that mean? It means you sanctify your work, using your work as worship. So in other words, Sunday you get enriched, but Monday you worship God by the way you run your business. Then there's the concept of apostolic zeal through words and actions. How do we behave as owners? Do we inspire our people? Do we enrich their lives by our actions? Or do they look at us and say, he's just using us? As a prophet, what are we called to? We're called to boldly proclaim the gospel. Yes, the priests are important in the churches, but what happens on Monday? The priest can't follow us into our business. It's our responsibility to take what we heard on Sunday and to share it with our people, the people that we spend hours and hours with. The priest gets 1 hour on a Sunday. How many hours do I get in front of my people? 40 to 50 hours per week. So if I'm quiet, or if I share the gospel for 50 hours in ways that I run my life, in moments of crisis, they look to you. How are you going to respond? These are the silent moments where St. Francis says, preach the gospel every day and use words only when necessary, because people are watching. People watch how you behave. The last one is to be a king. What does it mean, a king? I don't have a king's crown on, but I'm called to live like a king. What does that mean? A king is there to lead with justice. He's there to have a servant's heart and to have a benevolent spirit that brings about common good of his people. That's what we're called to do. At the bottom, you'll see a little picture there. There's the sacred world, which is the church, and then there is the secular world, where us business guys, we live. But what we're called to do is build a bridge between those two worlds, because no one else can get there. As much and as amazing as the priests are, you can't walk into a business and start sharing the gospel. They won't let you in. But they let me in. They actually pay me to go there every day. And I'm encouraged to share the gospel in the ways that I can share it. So I'm called to be a bridge between the secular and the sacred. I want to just show you some of the paradigms that I had. Firstly, I realized I have a share certificate. It says Peter owns Polydeck. But is that the truth? No. God gave me that business. And if he owns it, it's like this, the parable of the talent. He gives each person talents, but one day he's going to come back and say, what did you do with that talent that I gave you, the business that I gave you? And I think the most important thing he's going to ask me one day is not, Peter, how much money did you make? I don't think that's going to get me to heaven. He's going to ask me a simple question. How did you use your money? And how many people did you bring with you? That's the key question. And then lastly but not least, it's not about having more, it's about being more. Redemptor Hominis shares that very clearly. What is that in layman's language? That means purpose. What is your purpose? And when you look at purpose, I had to devise a purpose statement for our business. When I came back from that first retreat, I said, if I'm going to be outwardly bold, be a priest, prophet, and king in our business, I've got to share with people what my mission is. And this is our mission as a company. We're in the mining industry, but our purpose is to serve our customers and stakeholders with excellence so that we can grow profitably. I mean, everyone in the business world can agree with that, right? Makes sense. But here comes the important part. The last part is that profit enables us to create eternal value by conducting our business and caring for people in a way that honors God. That's a huge change. And let me tell you, it was scary to write that on my business card. That was the first moment of truth for me when I left the office and I had to write this on my business card. You'll see in front of you, you have my little red business card. The front is Peter, right? But I want you to turn it around. And when you turn that card around, you'll see that statement on the back. And that was probably the scariest moment for me to go public with it. But first I had to decide, what does eternal value mean? It looks like a really bold statement, right? But what does it mean? This is what it meant to us. Number one is the most important two commandments that Jesus gave us. Love me with all your heart and love your neighbor, like the Good Samaritan. But what's the other one that's really important that creates eternal value in a business? It's apostolic zeal. It's evangelism. We're called by Vatican II as lay people to join the church in its mission of evangelism. We as business owners have an incredible platform to do that. And it says, go make disciples of all the world. When Jesus was about to go into heaven, he said to his disciples, go make disciples of all the nations. I believe he said it to me. So how was I going to do this? Now's the practical part. That's what you've heard is theology. Now let me tell you the practical part. The first thing I did was I wrote it on my business card. We've got 50 salesmen. And I put this on the back of all of our 50 salesmen's card. And they said to me, Peter, that's a great idea, but I think that's not really for us. I think that card, you should give us 2, and we'll decide where to show it, right? I said, Jesus says, if you're lukewarm, I spit you out. So I said, I'm in. I don't care. So one of the salesmen put up his hand. He said, I said, Peter, if you force me to put this on the back of the card, I deal with a lot of mind guys, and when they see this, I'm going to lose orders. What are you going to do? And in a moment of inspiration, I said, sir, for every order that you lose because of this business card, I will pay you double commission. And he looked at me and said, okay, I'm in. And off he went. And so we went on this journey. This book, call it the business card book, is all about this card and what's written on the back. It's got over 30 miracles that I cannot explain how and why they happened, other than we were bold and shared our faith openly. And that's what happened. So once I did that, we went on the shop floor. This is Father Peter Devereaux, who was with me on the shop floor at our company, and we consecrated our company to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. I said, if I'm in, I'm all in. Going to be consecrated to the Sacred Heart. Because if there's one person that I need on my side on this journey, is the master of the universe. But that's that moment where we have to decide, is he truly the master of the universe, or is it just a story? It's a moment of truth, and we're asked to jump a leap of faith. So I did. So I consecrated the company in front of the employees. Not all of them wanted to come because they're not all Christian. We have Muslim, Buddhist, Hindus in our company. But I said, you're welcome. We're going to consecrate this company to God. And so many of them came and joined us on the shop floor. The next thing was the business card that I just shared with you. Now, the bigger question was, how am I going to make this part of the DNA of the company? So what we did is I went to every department, I have 400 employees, and I said to them, I want you to democratically elect one representative from each department in the business. There were about 15 departments. One person was elected, and they were put on this so-called caring team. Again, Redemptor Hominis taught me vocation, work as a vocation. And number 2 is that there should be meaningful participation by the employees. They need a part in this journey of faith and living out our faith. Because if it's just Peter, this will die. So I said, how do we incorporate our employees? So we got this concept of a caring team to put in place. Then we had to give them guidelines. We created this thing called the caring matrix. Now, the caring matrix is all about a very simple thing that Redemptor Hominis teaches us again. The dignity of a person requires that we enrich each worker physically, emotionally, and spiritually. If you're going to do something like this, you have to be bold and you have to be clear. What does that mean? So we created this matrix. And what we did is we took 10% tithing. In the Old Testament, it talks about 10% of our profits. We put it into a caring fund. And we said to our employees, this caring team, we want you to use that 10% to enrich the lives of, on the bottom, employees, the employees' families, and the community. And what we did is we broke it up, 60% employees, 30% employees' families, and 10% community was the initial guideline. It's changed a little since then. In 3 aspects, physical, emotional, and spiritual. Now you ask yourself, well, how do you do that? Well, what we did is we went to the caring team and said, you've got this money now. We want you to develop programs in every one of those 9 boxes to enrich the lives of those stakeholders. So off they went, and they started. I'll give you some examples. Home repair. We realized that many of our employees who live lower in the organization don't earn a lot of money. They're blue-collar workers. Their homes are in disrepair. Some single moms didn't have homes that they could fix, holes in the roof. So we would go out on Saturday and help them repair their home from the caring team. We had car repair. What we found is many of our employees, their cars are broken. They can't get to work on time. So we said we have a sick car fund where we help them pay for their expenses. If your car breaks down, you call an 800 number or a toll-free number, and a wrecker service will pick your car up, repair the car, and bring it back to you, no charge. for you and your spouse, was the extension of that program. Then there was things like wellness programs. One, addiction recovery. I want to tell you a small story. I've often said, if you really want to know if a CEO is in touch with the hearts and souls of his company, ask him if he knows who the janitor is, and if he knows the janitor's name, and something about him. I'll tell you a story about our janitor. He was caught sleeping under the machines one day, and they came to me and said, Peter, what do we do with him? In the old days, Peter would have fired him because he's useless, right? He's the man in the ditch. I don't need a guy in the ditch. I need a guy who's working. But if I see him truly as a child of God and not just a number, what should my response be as the Good Samaritan? I should do something. So what we did is we took that employee, we sent him away on a 3-month rehabilitation center, to a Christian rehabilitation center. He said, Peter, I don't want to go. I said, why? He says, no one's going to take care of my wife and my 4 sons. I said, we got it. The caring team went and put their arms around him and his family and took care of them while he was at rehabilitation. 3 months later, he came back, restored, a new man. He was relieved of his addiction to drugs. And he came back, and just a beautiful human being. We went on, we encourage our employees, you'll see some of them is a soup kitchen, a place where you feed the poor and the hungry. We go out as a team of employees to the soup kitchen, and I was serving a meal, and this little boy comes and hugs me, and I said, who's this? He says, sir, I just want to say thank you. I said, thank you for what? He says, you saved my dad's life. Not only did you save his life, he's now stopped hurting my mom, and he now takes us to church. Thank you. That's a real story. And a big guy came from behind me and grabbed me around my neck. And I'm like, whoa, what is this? I'm being attacked. My wallet, do you want my money? He said, no. Do you know who I am? I said, no. He said, my name is Marcus. I'm the little boy that said thank you 15 years ago. And because of you today, I'm the area manager of a large restaurant chain, and all my children go to church. Thank you to you. That's how generationally we can change lives, not just one person's life, but multiple people's lives, in a way that makes so much difference. You ask them to put that presentation back on again, please. Okay. So that's the physical side. Emotionally, some of the programs that we have is marriage retreats for our employees. Not everyone has a perfect marriage, right? When you struggle, you come and you get help from our company. We send you on a rehabilitation and marriage retreat. One of the things we did was we hired a chaplain, a spiritual director for our employees that walks around every day and gives what we call a 3-minute moment of encouragement to every employee. It's not a proselytizing. It's just walking by and saying, how's your day going? How's the children? Did you play? How did football go this weekend? Regardless, if he's Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, doesn't matter. But you know there's days when we walk around and you say, hey, how are you doing? And the tear runs down the cheek. Not you, the guy. Tear runs down his cheek and he says, I got problems. My wife's about to leave me. Or my children are on drugs. My mom's got cancer. I've got cancer. All these are real issues of people in the ditch. And if we've got people there to be there to support them, how incredible is that? So we are there on the spiritual side and the emotional side. It's kind of a blend of the two. Then on the spiritual side, we built a chapel in the middle of our plant. I often tease people when they come. I have CEOs from all over the world. We have over 3,000 customers, and they come visiting us. And I say, on the tour, I say, let me take you to my boss's office. And they're like, huh? I thought you're the CEO, the owner. I said, come here, let me show you. And I take them to a small chapel that's in the middle of our business. And it's amazing to see people's reaction to that. One guy said to me, he says, I'm not a Christian, but what I want to tell you is that I really respect you because I know you report to a higher power. And because of that, I know that you will treat me fairly and ethically. So regardless of what spiritual area they come back from. Now, one of the things I want to share with you here, the first, physical and emotional, that's nothing new. Google does that. Many other companies in the world care for their employees physically and emotionally. But they miss out on one critical component, the spiritual side. The way we see it is when people, there's a statistic that 70% of people in America that come to faith in Christ after the age of 18 do so in a moment of crisis. Crisis brings about change in people's lives. When we have a crisis and we're on our knees, our ears are open. We become like wax. And it's at that moment that our chaplain is able to share the gospel in a non-discriminatory way, but sharing where we are. And so there's an old saying, if I can't hear what you say until I know that you care. Because if the employees don't know that you care about them, they're not willing to hear what you say about your faith. So that's what we call EROI, eternal return on investment. Standard one is ROI. We measure ourselves with EROI. And that's something I encourage every business owner to look at and see what those metrics are. This is some things that our chaplain does. Drug and alcohol addiction, marriage, family issues, financial budgeting, relationship, hospital visits, prayer through challenges in life. This is our little chapel that we have, where this is my boss's office. Now, when we measure ourselves as a company, we don't measure ourselves by the standard techniques that a business at Harvard would teach us. We measure ourselves by ROI, so in other words, return on the cash investment. But then there's another side of it called the balanced scorecard, EROI. How do we measure? What will God ask me one day? How did I use his business to touch people's hearts? And we believe that on the right-hand side is where God will ask us. Community service, stewardship giving, core value index. We ask our employees, do we live index? We ask our employees, do we live our Christian values at business? They tell us 98% say, yes, you do. 2%, we're still struggling, but we're working on it. Does Polydeck respond in a time of emotional or physical crisis? 98% of our employees say yes. Competitive wages. Yes, we can talk about competitive wages, but do we live it? Do we pay more than the surrounding businesses? Yes, we do. And then faith commitments, transitions. What we do is we measure. We have 400 employees. In the past 15 years, 102 employees now have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ because of our company and the way we run our business. Isn't that what life all about? Isn't that what business is about? To use it as a platform to help and encourage others to grow? What are the impact on our business? You say, okay, this is a holy business theology, but what is the practical happenings in our company? When you care for people in a way that honors God, what happens? Number one, the turnover before Peter went on that retreat was 22%. People would just leave, 22% of them every year. Say, this is a terrible place to work, see ya. Now, less than 3%. People stay. Why? Because they're valued. They're treated like humans. They're treated like souls. And because of that, they want to stay. What's the implication of that? The implication of that is that our training costs went down to almost nothing because we don't have people to train. People stay and they are more productive. This is a statistic here that you see the growth of our company. That revenue per person is the number that we use to measure productivity. Look at what's happened over the years. Productivity has improved by 30%. Why? Because people respond more to purpose than they do to money. In the United States, there was a research done that when you pay someone to do a job, They bring roughly 60 to 70% of their whole being to work in exchange for money. What happens to the other 30%? It's called discretionary effort. We choose to bring it or not. If you give someone purpose and you align the business with their purpose, what happens? That discretionary effort gets used and the business becomes more efficient. People are willing to stay on Saturday. People are willing to do things that they normally would never do. Why? Because they see it's not to make Peter rich, but it's here to build the business. I want to just share with you a little bit of this business card is there. It's in 3 languages and over 30,000 copies have been distributed in English, Spanish, and Portuguese, and hopefully Italian soon. I want to just share it now. That's my story. I did this, and after about 5 years of implementing these principles in my business, people would come to me and say, Peter, help me. I want joy and peace and passion in my business. Help me. So I did it. But eventually I was so busy helping so many different CEOs, I said, I can't do this. I can run my business and all help you guys. So I opened this organization here called His Way at Work. This is a non-for-profit who started in 2008. And the mission is to transform the workplace by inspiring business owners to consecrate their companies and equip them to pursue eternal value by placing God at the center. That is the mission. Where does that come from? That comes from Second Vatican, where we as lay people are called in the mission field. Business owners are called to use their company. Business owners are called to use their companies to foster Christian values and increase faith. As I said, I get 40 hours with my employees. Every meeting that I have that has more than 10 employees in, I start in prayer. I invite people to pray of all different religions. Someone said to me, well, what happens if you got a Muslim or a Jew or a Buddhist? We invite them to pray with us. They know, and if they choose not to participate, no problem. But if you'd like to join the meeting early, you pray with us. So we incorporate that. In Europe, there's roughly 1%. Many countries have less than 1% of people going to church. Where are the other 99% of people? They're in our companies every day. His company, my company. How do you as the clergy reach those people? You can't. They hide. But we can. If we're called to be modern day apostles, we become an extension of the church. You empower us. And I hope and pray that the church will continue through Vatican II and the leadership to empower us business owners to take up this priest, prophet, and king that we're called to do. And the last point there is, I never forget, we were in Cancun, and there's this business owner there that had 6 huge, big hotels, 6,000 employees. And he heard about His Way at Work, and he said, Peter, I want to do this. He started on this process. We journeyed through this journey with him. And after 2 months, he says, Peter, I got it. I know exactly what my new job is. He says, help my employees find their way to heaven. Isn't that cool? When someone can see that, it changes everything. It changes who we are. In 2001, Pope Francis gave me an award, and he said to me, Peter, go and create communities of love across the world. Can you imagine if the Pope tells you that into your eyes? It changed my life. I now pour all my resources, my energy, my effort into trying to encourage people to do that. So what we've done is we've created a thing called the Association of Consecrated Business Owners. We're going around the world now to encourage owners to consecrate their companies and then to form groups of people in small teams of 10, 12 people to talk about formation, the social teaching of the church, how to apply that in real terms. We provide them a coach while they're in those small groups. And then we ask them to transform their companies into another polydeck, another company that can really add value. This was one of the first places I went to my parish priest in South Carolina. I said to him, I want to test this and see if there's a need for this concept of consecrating companies. So we had a banner in the back of the church for 2 weeks, and we invited business owners to come to a consecration mass. This was our first consecration mass. Look at how many, 68 people showed up to one mass to consecrate their companies to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and transform the way they see their business. From using people to enriching people. From using people to helping them get to heaven. That's a whole different way of thinking. Today we've impacted over 500 companies in 13 countries that represent over 500,000 employees and their families. Can you imagine if every Catholic-owned business got to do this? Can you imagine how many changes there would be in this world? How many people would come back to church? It's mind-boggling. And it's just an amazing story. And so I just thank you for your time, for listening to me, and I ask God to bless you and for you to please bless us on this journey. Thank you.